My name is Trin Nguyen, and I'm the Director of the Office of Workforce Development, an innovative agency that focuses on workforce development policy and programs to ensure economic mobility and success for all Boston residents. Last year, OWD gave away more than $13 million to 85 Boston-based community organizations that provide career pathway training to Boston residents. And these training programs bring social services, childcare, post-secondary education, credit building, and essential safety net programs to ensure the success of all Boston residents and participants from the program. I want to welcome you to the COVID-19 and CORI Reengaging in the Workforce for residents impacted by the CORIs. And no one cares more about equity and inclusion than our Mayor Walsh, who always encourages us to include second chance and returning citizens into all of our equity work and ensure the success of residents equally. I want to turn it over to Mayor Walsh to say a few words to kick off our panel.
I was muted, I'm sorry. Thank you, Trin, and thank you everyone for joining us today. I want to thank our panelists, incredible panelists that's going to share the insight about how the COVID-19 affects the workforce reentry, resources and safety net services for all of the residents impacted by CORI. And also, I think we have to acknowledge, or I'm going to acknowledge, what's going on in the country right now, in America. And really thinking about how a lot of the racism has impacted many people on this call. And you know that your city cares about you, and the work that we're going to do collectively is important. The work we've done in the past has been important. I'm going to talk about that in a little bit, but the work we're going to do moving forward as well. So thank you for taking the time to be here. I also want to give a shout out. I don't know if a lot of councils are on the call, but I do know Eddie Flynn's on the call. Eddie Flynn brings a unique perspective as a city councilor, a former probation officer, and has done a lot of work in the area around CORI. So I want to thank Councilor Flynn to be on the phone. And if anyone else on the phone, you can shoot me a text and I'll acknowledge you. Supporting returning citizens and paths into reentry has been a priority of mine personally for a long time. I'm not going to go into my history. I was a state rep in 1997 and worked on a whole host of issues. In 2011, I became the head of the building trades and created a program called Building Pathways, which is a pre-apprentice program into the building trades. Hundreds of people an hour in the building trades because of that program. I voted on the CORI reform bill in 2010. That was a piece of legislation that was talked about for a long time in the legislature. And we were able to pass that, which created opportunity as well. And I think now it's time to look at that legislation again. But I can't do that. I'm the mayor, so when I became mayor in 2014, lifting people up became a real important piece to me. And then we went from lifting people up to not locking people up. The numbers in arrests in Boston are down double digits, and that's because of a lot of interaction. I created the Office of Public Safety in 2014 to work with departments and agencies to tackle challenges, to find solutions to end violence in the neighborhoods. Up to that point, it was all about policing. It was about policing, and I felt that really addressed some of the issues. The Office of Public Safety, which is not police, needed to be created, and we were able to create that. In 2017, off of that, our work to expand to Office of Returning Citizens. Kevin Sibley's on here today, and Rufus Faulk runs our Office of Public Safety with Tracy Litka. And Kevin Sibley's on there today, the Office of Returning Citizens. Really about creating a network of support for people re-entering society. As you know, people get let out of prison, and if they don't have a place to go, you go back to what you did. And I know that as being a recovering alcoholic, if I didn't have the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, I'd return back to a bar. And that's what we do. But the work that we did have done doesn't stop due to COVID. Since March, we've been working remotely. Our Office of Returning Citizens has registered over 65 clients and assisted folks with transitional housing and employment, and is going to continue to do so. This work is true to what our values are, and I believe in second chances because I got more than one second chance, and I think it's really important that that everyone on this call understand that second chances and sometimes third chances and maybe even fourth chances. I think it's really important that we give people that opportunity. I believe everyone has something to offer, and I know that my team and the team that's on this call today and the people that are not part of the city but on this call, I know they believe that as well. No one should be defined by the hardest time or moment in your life. I certainly know how damaging a criminal record can be to a person's chance of success. A CORI barrier for most people is real about reentering society. But just Black men convicted of felonies are less likely to receive jobs more than any other demographic group with a criminal record. And that has to be understood and stated and really brought to the forefront. These challenges of employment really make it complicated to existing social, economic, and racial inequities. And as I said, I'm relevant to the conversation we're having today, and I think now's the time to continue to come into conversations about action. People re-entering society face extra hurdles, and I know I'm preaching to the choir in a lot of ways, dealing with things like technology, family trauma, stigma, alcoholism, mental health. It's okay to ask for help and all those things, and something that we have to do. We want to make sure that everyone can reclaim your life and reach their full potential, and also working with your families and residents in our city. This work is extremely important now as we think about reopening society in the post-COVID situation. In Boston, we've begun a gradual reopening process. We're using it but we're making the decisions based off of public health data and science. Economic recovery is going to be hard. Many people are out of work. They saw salaries reduced and they face increased expenses. And as our returning citizens will even face more challenges, more than they've experienced before. So the steps that we take now as a city are really important and equitable for long-term recovery. I'm almost done here because I know you didn't come to hear me speak. I think creating opportunities is going to be key, and working in ideas as well. This week, we dedicated $2.4 million to job training for emergency financial support through the Neighborhood Jobs Trust. And I want to thank all the folks that made that happen. The bottom line is that this city is here for you. I don't want you to feel that we're not here for you. When I say this city, this government that you have. And from the bottom of my heart, I want to thank all the panelists. And I'm going to stop talking now because this conversation is really important. I do want to give Bethany a shout out. I've had many conversations with Bethany about a lot of this work, and I know where her passion lies. She's been in different jobs here in the city, in different jobs in her career, and I think she's found her spot that she likes. So thank you, Bethany. Thank you, Trin. Thank you, everyone on the call. I'm going to turn this over now to
me.
Bethany. All right, all you.
Thank you so much, Mayor Walsh, for your remarks. It really is a true privilege and an honor to serve under your leadership. And thanks for being with us here today. Good morning, everyone, and welcome. My name is Bethany Serota, and I am the Deputy Director of Programs and Operations for the Mayor's Office of Workforce Development. Thank you again to the Mayor for your support and all of our collaborators, the Mayor's Office of Public Safety, Returning Citizens, SOAR Boston. Thank you to all of our panelists, and of course, thank you to everyone who's joined via Facebook and Zoom. Before we get started, just a few housekeeping matters. The duration of the program is scheduled to run for an hour and a half with time at the end for Q&A. For those of you who joined via Zoom, you're all muted, but you will be able to submit questions using the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. For those of you on Facebook, you are able to submit your comments in the comment field below the video. And we'll be sure to attend to all of the questions, hopefully, and we'll get to as many as we can anyway. Please do employ self-care as needed. This conversation is being recorded and will be available afterward. Welcome again, and thank you all for being here. Now, I'd love to introduce our panelists, or have the panelists introduce themselves, starting with public safety, then on to SOAR, returning citizens, human resources, then the MBLA. Dr. Faulk?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Dr. Rufus J. Faulk. I have the privilege of being the Director of Public Safety for the Mayor's Office. It's an honor and a privilege to be here to have this very important conversation as we talk about helping more of our citizens re-enter society, but also find a way that we can support them in their pathway in their road to rehabilitation and productiveness. So happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Talia Rivera. I'm the director of SOAR Boston. SOAR is a program of the Boston Centers for Youth and Families, and we serve young people between the ages of 14 and 24 that are gang involved. So this is a topic that affects a lot of our program participants.
Hi, everybody. Hope everybody's safe and well. My name's Jefferson. I'm the service delivery manager for SOAR Boston, and I am responsible for securing partnerships and developing relationships that allow our clients to have access to opportunities to effectively change the trajectory of their lives. Thank you for having me. I'm honored to be a part of this panel.
My name is Kevin Sibley. I'm the director of the Office of Returning Citizens. Thank you very much for hosting this, Bethany and Tren, and this is an extremely important conversation for us to have at this pivotal time in our American history. The ORC was created to provide assistance to those who've been impacted by incarceration. We do so in multiple ways, but we want to make sure that we continue to expand the relationship. And the most important part of expansion is connection. Thanks again for having me.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Vivian Leonard. I'm the Director of Human Resources for the City of Boston. I've had the honor of working with the Office of Workforce Development, TREN, and also the mayor in terms of taking these programs to the next level when it looks at returning citizens. Just a little bit of background. I don't think folks realize that the City of Boston was one of the first to ban the box, if you will, which means removing information from employment applications that asks whether or not someone had a criminal record. So we were doing that long before it became the law. So we were definitely the leader. And I thank Mayor Walsh for his persistence in terms of working with all of us to say, what is the next level in terms of making sure that we have a more inclusive employment system in the City of Boston? Thank you.
All right, good morning. My name is Asha White. I've been an attorney in Massachusetts for the last 16 years. At different times, I've served as a prosecutor, defense lawyer, and assistant clerk magistrate. I'm now currently the president-elect of the Massachusetts Black Lawyers Association, and I'm honored to be on the panel today for what I think is the most important conversation. Thank you.
Thank you all again and welcome. We're so fortunate to have such an esteemed panel. So I'm so glad that you're able to really contribute to this conversation. It's invaluable. And welcome again to all of you who are joining. My name is Bethany Serota of the Office of Workforce Development, and I'll be serving as moderator for this program. We all know that navigating employment for residents impacted by CORI was already a challenge, and this new terrain makes it more difficult in an already difficult terrain. And it really does exacerbate inequities, as we've seen, and we'll hear more about from our panelists. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Asha White to discuss briefly CORI in Massachusetts and in the City of Boston. Asha?
All right, thank you, Bethany. And again, I'm really honored to be part of such a distinguished panel. The panel has a lot of expertise in the different effects that CORIs have on people's lives and different resources. I'm going to focus a little bit on the definitions so we can all know what we're referring to when we start using a lot of these terms. So it can become a little bit of a convoluted conversation with all these acronyms and the different laws. And there have been a sea change in the CORI laws in the last couple of years. So I want to narrow it down to 4 terms that I want everyone to focus on to try and take away from this conversation. So I'm going to discuss what we call CORI, what we call carry, sealing, and expunging. All right, so those are the 4 terms I really want to define and focus on. So starting with what we refer to as CORI versus CARI. So CORI versus CARI. Right, so starting with CARI. CARI stands for Court Activity Record Index. So the way you have to think of that, it's really an electronic central file that the probation department keeps. And it's only accessible to law enforcement and judges. And it has all records of everyone's criminal history, all court appearances, but it also has some additional things beyond that. It has juvenile records, it has sex offender registry information, it has a statewide domestic violence database. So it has just this, it has care and protection information for abused and neglected children and yet allegations surrounding those sort of things, children in need of services. So it has a lot of information beyond just your criminal court appearances that are on the CARI. Again, that's only accessible to law enforcement and judges, and that's kept by the Massachusetts Probation Department. What is a little bit more common when we talk about the barriers that criminal records impose is the CORI. All right, again, different than the CARI, what we refer to as the CORI. The CORI stands for Criminal Offender Record Information. That is what we commonly refer to as your criminal record. All right, so that's the CORI. What it is, it's kept by the Criminal Justice Information Services Department, or what we call CJIS. The CORI includes all information about all adult criminal court appearances. So that includes convictions and non-convictions. So cases that someone was ever what we call arraigned on, meaning officially charged with, even if that person was found not guilty or the case was ultimately dismissed, it shows up on the CORI. All right, and you also have warrants, things like that can show up on the CORI. All right, so in terms of a CORI, what you don't see, you will not see a juvenile record on a CORI. You will not see restraining order information or some of the other stuff I mentioned for the CARI. This is something that's accessible to employers, and that's what they're going to see. Landlords and employers will generally see all misdemeanors that go back about 5 years, and they'll see felonies within the last 10 years when they run your CORI. There's additional access for certain employers. All right, so I'm not going to go through the whole list, but healthcare, schools, military, and the criminal justice system have some additional access to seeing someone's entire record. It's kind of a tiered system, depending on what sort of employment it is, whether it be camp or working with kids. They're going to see more than applying for a job in some other sort of industry. The important thing to remember, well, one of the important things to remember when talking about your CORI, before a job denies you employment based on your CORI, they have to notify you of that it's based on your criminal record, and they have to give you an opportunity to correct that information. And I can tell you that it's very common to have mistakes on someone's CORI. So please take a look at it and try and make sure everything is correct, just like you would a credit report. Make sure everything is correct. It is not uncommon to have mistakes on a CORI. All right, so that's the difference between those two things. Quickly, I want to go through what we mean by sealing and what we mean by expunging. So sealing and expungement, and this is the most common question you get from people who might have had a brush with the law at some point. What's the difference between sealing and expunging? Which one should I do, and how do I do it? All right, so sealing and expunging are different. The main difference is sealing means that the amount of people that can see, the amount of institutions or people that can see your record is severely limited. All right, so if something is sealed, then only certain people or institutions and certain employers will have access to that. So if you seal something, it can be very beneficial because the majority of employers will no longer see it, and you now can report that you don't have a criminal record if that's your only case on the record, right? So if that's your only case and it's sealed, you can now report you don't have a criminal record. So it severely restricts the public access to who can see any prior criminal history. It doesn't negate the case, all right? There are two kinds of sealing. You have administrative and discretionary. Again, that can get into a lot of details. I'll go through them very, very quickly. You have administrative sealing, which is free, which is automatic. You can apply to the probation department to get things sealed. So the waiting periods are after, if you've been convicted of a felony, you have to wait 7 years, then you can get it sealed. For misdemeanors or juvenile convictions, about 3 years. And then you can have it sealed. There are certain crimes that are excluded from being sealed. All right, so some examples are sex offenses, level 2 and 3, firearms, and anything that's still open on your record cannot be sealed. And remember, if you're on probation, that's considered an open case, even though the plea might have been done, the case is still technically open if you're on probation. Then you have discretionary sealing, and you have to go to the court where the case was out of to be eligible for discretionary sealing. Those are adult non-convictions, not guilties, dismissals, which are very, very common on people's records, and people want to get them off for good reason because they have not been convicted. So you have to go to the court where the case happened, where the case was dismissed, or where you were found not guilty, and you can apply for sealing in front of a judge. There's no waiting period. So if you're found not guilty or a case is dismissed, you can go the same afternoon to the court and apply. All right. And I suggest that you do. All right. And or the next day, whatever it is, and you apply, you'll get a court date, and it's discretionary. And then, you know, a good idea is to attach letters or whatever it is, but just state a reason as to why you want that case sealed. And, you know, the reason is usually related to employment, moving on with your life, very common reasons. You'll have a good chance in many cases of getting that sealed. Expungement is different. Expungement involves a total destruction of the record. Okay, so expungement involves a total destruction of someone's record, so it's no longer accessible essentially to anyone. So it's different than sealing, which doesn't destroy the record, just makes it impossible for people to see. Expungement orders the clerk's office to actually destroy the record. There are a lot of things you have to qualify for expungement. Again, those get into a lot of detail. We can talk more about those. Generally, it had to have been an offense that you may have committed prior to the age of 21 years old, and you have the specific offense has to qualify for expungement. And there's a long list of things that exclude you from expungement, but there are some things that would qualify you for expungement. But generally, it has to be prior to 21 years old, and you have to go to the court to apply for expungement. I would encourage everyone, if they're considering sealing or expunging, to seek many of the free legal services that we have around the city, or services that we have at City Hall that can help out, because it can be a lot of information. It can be a little bit confusing. So with that, I will turn it over back to Bethany, and I hope that helped.
Thank you, Asha. That was absolutely insightful. You do a brilliant job of making very complicated information understandable. So thank you for that. I do want to add a caveat that you do look at people's records on an individual case-by-case basis, and also a point that some categories of firearms are still sealable. And we'll turn it back over to you to just discuss a little bit about that process of CORI sealing and expungement later on in the discussion. So now I want to pose a question to the panel. In your work that you do with people who've been impacted by CORI, can you describe some of the challenges you faced pre-COVID-19 and now in the midst of this new normal and very much still active pandemic, specifically as it pertains to employment? And we'll start again with public safety, go to SOAR Boston, returning citizens, and then human resources. Dr. Faulk?
Thank you, Bethany. That is a very important question. I think a lot of the work that the Office of Public Safety is tasked with is around coordinating of services, and that is connecting individuals and communities directly to services and directly to resources. And a lot of the work that we do with the population that we're serving oftentimes is that population most likely to be impacted by what's happening within our streets. So that is oftentimes attracted to or attached to gun violence and oftentimes retaliatory gang activity. So that is a lot of the population that we're serving, that we're trying to sort of transition out of where they are into positive and productive adulthood. So before COVID hit, it was a task to try to transition folks, because oftentimes that population we're serving don't really have the skill set to enter into the workforce that we are trying to get them into, the local and regional economy. Either they have issues around their academic status, or they may have the GED high set, or even some college, but unfortunately because of their criminal record, they have a tough time entering into the job market. So some of the options and opportunities that we have for them were sort of limited, which led us to the creation of programming like Operation Exit. Operation Exit is a program that the mayor started, and that program was designed to transition those young adults, both male and female, who were had previous run-ins with the law, and try to bring them into the building trades, bring them into viable employment opportunities. To date, we have 109 graduates in the process of starting a new graduating class, but I think we all know that we need more than 109 slots for that population that needs our assistance in transition. And so before COVID, we had difficulty around the narrative, or how we even view folks who are coming from the circumstances, situations that we talk about, being gang involved. I often say that we often deal with the most devalued population in the city and in the country. We're talking about young, Black and brown men and women. And then how do we get it to the point where we can have employers be empathetic about giving them a second chance? The mayor mentioned that Black men, in particular with CORIs, are least likely to be employed out of any CORI group. But the second part is that a Black man without a CORI versus a white man with a CORI, that white man with a CORI and a Black man with a college degree, that white man with a CORI is more likely to be employed. So we have implicit biases that existed before COVID. So now we're talking about post-COVID, and while we're during COVID, we're trying to be innovative around the opportunities that could be available. We are in the process of starting our next Operation Exit class, trying to abide by
No, I think we lost Rufus. Hopefully he'll be joining us. He'll rejoin us. So maybe if we could go on to SOAR and then have Rufus finish his comments when he joins in.
Yep, sounds good. As I stated earlier, SOAR Boston is the City of Boston's gang intervention program. And our program is designed to help gang-involved youth change their life course trajectory by connecting them to resources and services that will improve their social and economic success. And there is so much research around this topic in particular, but one of the major contributing factors for communities that are inundated with gang violence, drug trafficking, prostitution, you name it, any social ill that we see happening in our community has been attributed to joblessness. And it's definitely not a secret. It's been a long-standing issue in our community, just as Rufus was just stating, in particular for Black men. But when you're a Black man with a CORI, that even lessens your opportunity for employment. And so I'm gonna allow Davo to share a little bit more about our work specifically as it relates to pre-COVID-19 and afterwards. But I felt like I should just share, just a couple of personal stories, because the CORI has impacted me personally in many different areas of my life. But two quick things that I would like to share. One, it was one summer, I was hired by the Boston Public Schools to be a paraprofessional in a summer program. And so because they had hired me for the summer, I was thinking, oh, this would be great. I should probably apply to become a paraprofessional for the school year, which I did. I applied, I interviewed, they offered me the position, ran my CORI, came back and told me that I could not they couldn't offer me the position because of my CORI. And so for someone who's young and who's trying to change their life, to do something different, you know, to get a response like that is really disheartening. And this second story is not about employment, but it's unfortunate. It's an unfortunate story about how long CORI can impact your life. So this was probably about 2 years ago. One of my sisters was struggling. The Department of Social Services got involved. So I figured, let me figure out a way to get temporary custody of my niece and nephew. So I reached out to them, had conversations with them. They said, let me check your background. They ran my CORI. It came back and they said, there's nothing, we can't give you your niece and nephew. What you would need to do is get several letters of support. Now, mind you, this was 24 years ago, over 2 decades ago, right? And I feel like it's so unfortunate because I have, one, acknowledged the wrongdoing that I have done. I served my time for it, but yet 2 decades later, I still got to defend the progress that I've made. And we see this, I see this all the time with the young men in particular, young women as well, but mostly young men that we work with, that they don't have, because of CORI, access to basic needs, employment, housing. And I can go on and on about stories where my CORI has impacted my life, the life of people I love. But the reality is, employment is a basic, I feel like, human right, and CORI should not be a hindrance to that. And so one of our longer term goals is to really start to cultivate relationships with local corporations and industries like hospitality, retail, warehousing, in addition to some city departments like Parks and Rec and Public Works and Waste Management, so that we're able to create a pipeline for employment for our program participants. And we know a lot of the young men that we work with have not had a long work history or experience. So the other piece of the work that we're planning to attach to our jobs program is also developing a core and workplace readiness life skills training, so that we can give them the skill set, help them get the skill set that they need, so that when employment opportunities are available and the door opens, that they're prepared for it.
Yeah, thank you for that, Talia. So to answer the question, Bethany, around like pre-COVID obstacles that our clients were facing, or we faced in dealing with the population that we serve. So as Talia mentioned, we are the city's gang intervention program. That being the case, we work with high-risk, at-risk populations, and in particular, people who are likely to shoot or be shot. So it's a difficult population to reach in terms of introducing opportunities and services to, connecting to them. Where are these folks at? Where do they hang? Where do they live? Who are their friends, etc. So that takes time. It takes effort. It's not easy work to do. And then once you do connect to these folks, convincing them that, you know, their life has so much more potential than what they've experienced thus far, that's not easy. And that takes time and effort to get a person to see that they can be much more than what they've been. So those were some of the major hurdles that we encountered previous to COVID. Some of the things that we've been encountering since COVID has hit us, some of the communities we work with, they don't have access to technology. And so there are few programs that are still available that people can access via online platforms, Zoom, Google Hangouts, things of that nature. But some of these households don't have either a computer or they don't have the internet access if they do have the computer. So we had to shift some service delivery approach to address these things. So we'll bring laptops with hotspots to a person's house, to a space where they feel comfortable, that we can work on things like resumes or applying for employment opportunities. Some other challenges we had of a number of the programs that we could in the past use to help assist young folks with exiting that lifestyle. They're either put on hold kind of indefinitely due to COVID. So as an example, Job Corps, that's a program that we can use to get a person who's ready to change their life out of the city, because sometimes changing your life where you live is a challenge. So Job Corps is a great resource for that. As we speak, Job Corps is not enrolling any new clients. So the folks that we have that are ready for a Job Corps opportunity due to COVID, they can't access it. Another challenge that we've seen a bunch of times since COVID has hit us is the registry has very limited services. So a number of our young folks, a challenge for them is just getting a permit or getting a license. And we have a number of folks who we have in line who are ready. We have the funds available to help them secure these credentials, but the registry is providing limited services, and some of that limitation is for either permits or licenses if you don't already have them. So those are a couple of the challenges, just a few of the things that we're dealing with and trying to help our young folks to access opportunities despite COVID.
I'd like to yield the floor to Dr. Faulk so he can continue his statement. Dr. Faulk.
Oh, thanks, Kev. And my apologies. Then we're talking about post-COVID and during COVID, just in terms of technology, around technology and how do we access it and how it sort of changed our way of service delivery. And that was literally a phone call from a brother that calls me twice a week that's currently locked up at MCI Norfolk, and that threw my whole operating system off. But again, just talking about how do we deliver services post-COVID, I'm just going to just be brief, and just Talia and Dave will hit on every point. And I think from my perch, my role is to try to how do we talk about advancing the narrative? We talk about empathy, talk about how easy it is to have a CORI, and those of us who were able to escape that, how do we sort of have that conversation to explain that, again, that one moment when you did get caught up shouldn't be the narrative for your entire life. And individuals battling to try to get their life redirected, as a city, we need to make sure that we're there to support them, to provide as many opportunities as possible. So at the Office of Public Safety, our role is to make sure that we are trying to connect individuals to those services and also trying to cultivate partnerships externally. So whether that be trying to find new employment opportunities in new industries, whether it be aeronautics or the meds and eds of the world, figuring out how we can bring our population into those job opportunities so we can redirect and rewrite some of the histories that we have within our community. So I'll stop there. Kev, I will pass it right back to you. And my apologies again for the technical difficulties I was having.
Thank you, Dr. Faulk. Education is the #1 piece that I think that has been missing in these United States about reentry and what that is and how important it is. In a study in 2014, nearly 80% of newly released prisoners were arrested for a new crime within 5 years of their release. Returning citizens are 12.7 times more likely to die than people of the same age, sex, and race who have never been incarcerated. We're talking about people. And when we begin to talk about pre and post-COVID, some of the situations that existed before COVID exist afterwards. Some of the areas that we have discussed already are employment and housing. So what was the difference before? Before, people weren't listening as much. Now they're listening more. I'm not sure if it's because of the recent court rulings to early release from prisons that people are understanding what transitional housing is. Transitional housing is not affordable housing. It is an opportunity for someone to get out of jail and go to a warm place that they don't have to battle hundreds of other individuals by 3 o'clock and get their stuff out by 7 a.m. Transitional housing is an opportunity for them to arrive to a place and stay and get their and work on their lives and reconnect with their families and their communities. So we examined the two things. Before COVID, our primary concern was education. The education of individuals to allow for opportunities in employment. Is understanding the system that was created intentionally and systematically to keep people incarcerated. And as you can see by the numbers don't lie. The majority of individuals that occupy our prison are men of color disproportionately. So I look at one of our opportunities, well, of course, as the mayor mentioned before, the Office of Returning Citizens is created to provide an opportunity for individuals who've been impacted to have somewhere to go to receive direction, to receive basically care, just to have an ear. There's a lot of people out here that feel like they are thrown away after they are released. I had one of my brothers tell me that there was more community on the inside of this prison than on the outside. And that opened me up in a way, because he said, you know, on the outside, there's no one to check in on you. No one cares, and communities are built. I'm appreciative of this community that's on Zoom right now. I'm appreciative of the resources that we're looking to get. And as we continue to move post-COVID, we want to explore opportunities in technology that have been absent of a face of color as we move forward. Recently, the Office of Workforce Development has granted us an opportunity to explore jobs and employment in technology, specifically for our age range of 28 to 38 years old, where we know in the city of Boston, services for that age group have been waning, and they continue to become an increased burden for my brother and sister Talia and Davo. So what is the difference? The difference is the focus and the effort. The difference is the conversation that's going on now that we're able to engage in based on race equity. The difference is that this partnership that's beginning to form throughout the nation is listening to the needs of the returning citizen, and listening and is where we begin that connection to jobs and opportunity out here. Thank you.
So just to pick up on what I think Talia was saying, which is really very poignant in terms of what are some of the skills that are lacking in terms of individuals that may have CORIs. So at the Office of Human Resources, you know, we realize that not everyone has a computer, and therefore not everyone has the ability to apply for jobs. So what we did here was we set up computers in our office and in other places throughout the city, whether it be the library and other areas, to say, you know, if you can get to these areas, someone will help you fill out, you know, that application process. But more importantly, I think when we look at individuals that have CORIs, what I've seen over my career is that for those individuals, in many instances, when I go back to what Asha was saying, some of these people have open records, and they don't know what it means to close the record, that they can get the record closed. You know, that was a big knowledge gap in terms of what do I do, where do I go, you know, how do I make that happen? I'm grateful that we centralized CORI for the city of Boston out of the Office of Human Resources, with the exception of police and fire, meaning that the departments who were doing the hiring did not have the ability to know whether or not someone had a CORI. I think the most important thing that we did in terms of banning the box was to say to folks, you cannot ask these questions during an interview process, okay? You just can't, and it's illegal to do so. But we were doing that from a policy perspective before we even got to the point where it was against the law. So the city really took the lead on that, and I have to say the state followed, okay? The other thing was that on those postings and jobs for which we were hiring, individuals knew whether or not they actually were going to be CORI. So even before you applied for the job, you knew whether or not that was a position for which you might be CORI. We have a number of jobs in the city of Boston for which we don't perform CORIs. And so there are times when people would call me, we would have a discussion, they would be quite frank about having a record. And I would say to them, based upon what you're telling me, here are the positions for which I would recommend that you apply. And, you know, based upon what they further told me about their CORI, I would say, why don't you go see someone to try and get that CORI closed out or clean up your CORI. But at least if you can get in a position that doesn't require a CORI and prove yourself, then you have the opportunity to move into another position. But first, let's try and get you a job here and then talk about what's next for you. So when we talk about skills, that's the other area that I see as post-CORI having been an issue, which is why it was a pleasure to partner with Trent to talk about how do we start to build pipelines, okay, for the community as well as employees who are internal to the city of Boston, and looking at their skill set and what is necessary in order for them to be able to get a better job, if you will. So that has been great, because in doing that, Trent has touched all the major areas when you go through this training program, such as looking at some of the social service aspects of individuals' lives, whether it be housing, listening to individuals with compassion and empathy when they start to explain their situations in terms of how they ended up in jail, how they ended up with the CORI, and then also being able to point to some of the resources that are available to them, you know, whether it be working with Kevin or Rufus to say, hey, we have these individuals that need some additional services beyond the training, you know, can you assist with that? So I think we have to be sure that we're connecting all of the dots internally to provide these services to folks. And some of the jobs are really good paying jobs if you have the skill set. Sure, we can hire people in the public works department if you have a CDL license, which is some of the training that Trent was doing, you know, and then moving up to becoming a heavy motor equipment operator that not only pays well, but also gives you benefits so that you can provide for your family and not have to worry about, you know, where you're going to make up the difference, if you will, to pay your rent or put food on the table. So a lot of this is really about looking at the whole person. Okay, having a job is wonderful, but how do we ensure that once they get the job, they keep the job? And that entails a lot of coaching and talking to people about what it means to re-enter the workforce and be responsible for coming to work every day in a timely manner, because you can't be the exception to the rule because you had a record. There are some managers or supervisors that will work with you for a minute, but when that continues to be your storyline, then that means that, you know, you're pretty much on your way out the door. So as we address some of these issues, we have to talk about what it means to be a part of the workforce and what responsibility do you have. So just like we're willing to help you, you have to help yourself. It's a two-way street. And, you know, one of the programs that I'm involved in is Training Inc. So Training Inc. Trend, once again, was responsible for funding scholarships to Training Inc. that would give someone a second chance at enhancing their skill set so that they could get a job that would allow them to provide for themselves or their families. Post-COVID, I think some of these things that have been issues, and many of you on this panel and who are on the phone, Facebook, you know that there's been issues with respect to housing, issues with respect to employment. So even if you talk about someone without a CORI, for people of color, these have been ongoing issues, but what COVID has done is brought this to the forefront to highlight these disparities in a way I don't think that they've been highlighted in many, many, many years. So now there is a national discussion in terms of what do we do about this? And I think we have to make the most of this in terms of trying to obtain as many resources as possible in order to help folks with CORIs and the folks without CORIs, because if you look at the employment statistics, they're horrendous. So even in a good economy, folks of color, the employment statistics were horrendous. You know, the city of Boston, I think, has done a lot to try and address some of these issues. We are one employer. So how do we make sure at this time, when these disparities have been highlighted, that we get other employers on board to say, okay, what can you do? And to the mayor's credit, he has been doing that. He has been challenging other employers to say, okay, we are one employer, we're leading by example, but how can you step up to lend, whether it be funding, hiring people, committing some jobs? I think that's the conversation that needs to keep going, and that's what we need to keep pushing as we work together to make sure that we are moving the whole concept of employment forward from the perspective of looking at these individuals as a whole individual and not just sort of section off and say, okay, we're only here to help you with employment. You know, what does your home life look like? You know, are you getting the social services that you need to not only stay employed, but stay in your home? These are the things that we have to address the whole individual. And, you know, that's the term now that's, you know, the term in terms of even when you look at people from mental and behavioral health, it's the whole individual. And that's what we have to continue to address. I feel very lucky to work with many of you on this panel, and I look forward to continuing to see how we can strengthen moving forward the whole concept of the whole individual in terms of employment and other areas. Thank you.
Bethany, I'd like to expand on what Ms. Leonard had just said. I just wanted to mention that the connections and putting everyone in the room to understand what's going on is extremely important. Last year in October, for the first time in the city of Boston, the Sheriff's Department, the District Attorney's Department, Mass Hire, and the ORC hosted a resource and job fair. And we brought the individuals together. We had over 40 employers and resources at that event. And those employers, we spoke with each employer individually to say, look, we are dealing with a population that have been impacted by a CORI, but that doesn't identify who they are as individuals. So they should be given the opportunity to be employed at your site. 40 organizations agreed to say, you're right, let's get this together. We had over 200 people to come out and apply for positions and apply for resources. We had planned another one in May, but that has, due to COVID, that was impacted. But there's an opportunity on the horizon with Project Opportunity, working with workforce development, working with SOAR, working with all the different departments and as a body, examining our workforce here in Massachusetts to allow people an opportunity to not be just a record, but just be individuals who are contributors to families and communities. So I just want to add that as well.
Thank you, Kevin. And thank you to all of our panelists for such great and insightful answers. I'm having a connection issue here. Some of the main themes addressed are, you know, increasing access to vital resources, creating opportunity, and, you know, we're working together as departments, most of us on here who interface with people impacted by CORI on a unified collective approach between workforce development, public safety, returning citizens, SOAR. Clearly, Ms. Vivian, we could use some of your expertise. I know you're quite busy, but we're really trying to come up with a great program to target this issue. So we do ask that you stay tuned. As mentioned, a critical component to job access is CORI sealing. So to that end, we've launched a free CORI and an expungement sealing program with the Lawyers Clearinghouse. We encourage you all to share with your networks, take advantage of it. We thank you all for listening. We've seen your questions coming through. We will try to get to everyone, but we do want to be mindful of everyone's time. So we are going to provide the contact information for all the mayor's offices involved today in order to sort of systematize questions, streamline them, as well as provide any necessary referrals. So thanks again, everyone. We want to hear from everyone out there, so do submit your questions using the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. If you're on Zoom, on Facebook, under the video in the comment section, and we'll try to get it to as many of you as we can. Let's see, so I am gonna go to some of the questions. I saw one question, and this might go to you, Vivian, but it at least addresses the fact that we should be looking at the whole person. And actually, this might be for you, Kevin or Talia. It's just open for anyone who wants to weigh in, or all of you. Is there any information, this comes from Christiane, is there any information on how many people who have been incarcerated have mental health issues and how that aspect of their being can be supported? Feel free to unmute yourself.
I feel like Kevin has that. Kevin, if you're trying to speak, you're on mute.
There we go. There we go. One of the latest reports on mental health and drug addiction in the prison reports somewhere in the vicinity of 74% of individuals who are incarcerated have mental health and or addiction issues. Of that, 11% of them have to use psychotropic drugs in order to live their daily lives. So what the prison system has done is actually become an ad hoc health facility, since we are not paying much attention to how to manage health and health wellness. And we want to make sure that we highlight that. So thank you for that question.
Just to add a little bit of a backdrop to that, many of the individuals that before they were incarcerated had these mental health issues, which I feel to some extent how they ended up in the situation. When I was growing up, we tended to lock people up in mental health facilities. And then at some point there was a decision that was made to let everybody out on the street, close down the mental health facilities, and they were defunded. And so you had people roaming around the streets with no place to live and not being cared for, if you will. And I just think that we are seeing some of that, if you will, come home to roost this very day by how individuals who have mental health have been treated. I don't know what the answer is to that, but I just know that there are less facilities to treat individuals unless they are, if you will, at the extreme ends of mental health, whereby they then end up getting put away in these locked up facilities. And then also just the whole issue of disparities in healthcare, if you will, I think plays a big part in this as it pertains to people of color. So it's not surprising that that number would be that high, Kevin. I'm glad you have the numbers. You're my numbers guy. I'm gonna go to you for that. But I think it also, there is a foundation and a history there that has led us to this point.
Thank you. Anyone else want to add? Otherwise, I'll go right to the next question. It's a bit long. It comes from, but it's fine, from Hillary. What role do you think the private universities in particular might have in doing work to support people coming home, especially now? Hillary is part of a team of people at Tufts University dedicated to supporting people once they come out of jails and prisons, including but not restricted to those who take part in the Tufts College and prison programs at Concord and Sousa. I don't know if I said that correctly. We work closely with Kevin Sibley and are wondering if others on this incredible panel, maybe especially from SOAR, Office of Workforce Development, would be willing to connect and help figure out how best to offer educational services and support for people coming home. They're trying to establish both educational and employment pathways to Tufts, also work with Bunker Hill Community College, and a new reentry program developed in collaboration with returning citizens. So the idea is to possibly connect. I don't know if you want to weigh in, Talia or Devo?
I would absolutely like to connect with Tufts on that topic. There are a number of different ways that we could work together to help advance that particular population. Things around workforce development, job training readiness programs. So Bunker Hill had a program that they partnered with a utility company to provide training to get people quickly prepared for employment opportunities with utility companies. And it also came with a credential, and it came with the possibility of actually securing an associate's degree in that particular line of work. So there are a number of different ways that we could partner. There's research that could be done around employment for that population, post-release, things of that nature. So I'd love to connect.
Sorry, I was muted there. Thank you so much, Devo, for that answer. And thank you, Hillary, for the question. This question is for Dr. Faulk. It comes from Carol. Dr. Faulk, before you were cut off, you were starting to speak about the next session of Operation Exit. Could you expand and advise on the new session, provide information? She was at the last information session where Linda made it clear that referring partners remain engaged with the people they refer. So maybe if you could expand upon that a bit, Dr. Faulk.
Great question. And again, my apologies for the technical difficulties. So I'm actually late for a call now. We're on a call right now. It's our third call for Operation Exit for this session, which will be the 7th section. Just really trying to get the logistical part in place in terms of how we're going to abide by CDC guidelines, physical distancing, making sure we have our referring partners who are not only can refer their clients, but again, can walk their clients throughout the entire process. Once somebody is a part of Operation Exit, they're a part of Operation Exit for Life. We have one of our graduates from our early class who spoke at the State of the City this year. So it just in terms of our referring partners, but also at OPS and Building Pathways, YOU, all of the agencies that are a part of this Operation Exit program, BPD, we make sure that we walk our graduates through the entire process, recognizing that, again, that oftentimes this is their first real job experience. The soft skills that they are gaining is still a learning process. So we make sure that we walk them through the entire process, providing some accountability, but also making sure that we are also very aware of the circumstance situation that they're coming from. So I'll be sure to email you some information. I will put my Ms. Serota will give out my contact information. I'll make sure I keep you abreast of all the new details for this new class and every class we have moving forward. We're trying to get to the point where we can do Operation Exit 365 days a year, not just in the building trades, but in a lot of these industries that have room for growth, especially for folks coming from the experiences that we're servicing. So thank you for your question, and I'll be in touch, definitely.
Thanks, Dr. Faulk. Our next question comes from Guy. How can we get individuals who are currently incarcerated started with these training and education opportunities and supports while inside? Guy believes individuals should be exposed to these opportunities before their release. He believes that this work has to begin on the inside in order to get individuals prepared for release and then connect them to networks upon release, and to continue doing the work. Kevin, he says, you mentioned the sense of community on the inside and in higher ed. And we often see that sense of community it helps students move through their academic journey because they have each other to lean on and support.
Great question, Guy. Some of the things that we're moving on is a understanding of the coordinators on the inside. So on the inside of a prison, there are reentry coordinators that are whose task it is to help individuals move toward release from prison and reentry. So we're working with them in coordination with them, so there would be no sense of disruption on what's going on in the inside. The other piece is that we have been exploring and asking the question, why is there limited technology on the inside? Or why is technology not provided in an equal way throughout the system, throughout the penal system? We've discovered my partner, Carla Acevedo, who's the reintegration director at the Sheriff's Department, informed us that they are now going to receive tablets for the inside. That's huge, because we want to begin to understand how we train, even concepts like Zoom and Google Meets. We have to begin to look toward technology as a form of employment in the future. So we're taking baby steps, but everyone has to be on the same page on how to get this technology, how to get this education in the inside, especially post-COVID. We're discovering different ways to impact that. And if technology is going to be allowed in the system, then we can begin technological type trainings for individuals to be primed for workforce opportunities.
Thank you, Kevin. And just a comment from Xiomara from Youth Build. They want to collaborate with all of you, so please do connect with Xiomara. She mentions that Youth Build has a HiSET program and a workforce training program that's construction based, and they're accepting applications even now during the pandemic. So anyone in the audience and all of you, if you would connect, that would be great. So for more questions.
Bethany, one more, I want to add this piece too, because of that construction came up. The Office of Workforce Development and Wentworth School of Technology, College of Technology, Institute of Technology, excuse me, have an amazing program through the professional development departments. And I always encourage individuals to get a certification in something. If you provide yourself with a certification of something, you will then meet some of the standards that Ms. Leonard spoke about having that criteria. So through the city, through Trend, through yourself, Bethany, there's opportunities there to get these certifications to go into construction, to be certified in different areas of construction and construction management, rather than just going into general labor, carrying the bricks, as I call it. So make sure that we continue to put out that information through Project Opportunity. That training is important down the road as we begin to identify that we're more than just brick haulers, and there's nothing wrong with that, but we should put some education behind what we want to do and what we want to see, especially in the field of construction and construction management.
Thank you, Kevin. Apologies if you're hearing some of the construction in the background. A few sort of comment questions from Bob. Does the City of Boston have a 3-month transitional work program using city jobs like Cambridge Works, City of Cambridge Human Services Department? And he has and still works with the Boston area hospitals for the past 50 years. How can we get Boston area hospitals to do much more hiring of returning citizens than they've ever done?
I'll just briefly say, I think a lot of it is us making the ask and really clearly defining what we are looking for. I think oftentimes we have entities that want to help, but just don't know how they can help. And we haven't made the real concrete ask of, we are looking for a certain amount of positions, looking for these level of entry-level positions. I had a conversation with some individuals over at Dana-Farber, and they explained to me about the number of opportunities that they had to offer. But they didn't have a direct connect to my office, so I had to reach out to them. I think it's us being willing to host webinars like this, have conversations like this, invite employers inform them that we're not asking or expecting them to take every returning citizen, but if we can have a group of 10 employers being willing to take 10 individuals apiece, that's a way in which we can sort of spread the burden around and still be able to make sure that we are transitioning folks who are not only just entering society, but those who are living with CORIs as well. So we have individuals who have been released for 5-10 years now, still struggling to enter into the job market, who are entry-level position can be a world of difference for them. So I think it's about us making the concrete ask to our meds and being willing to figure out what's the best way to get folks transitioned in terms of what is some of the baseline training that they may need to be eligible for these positions. So I think it literally comes down to us having those asks, and if he's willing to use some of his leverage in terms of his relationships to sort of build a meeting and have this conversation, we are more willing than ever to be at that table.
I agree with Rufus. It's all about the ask. We have not because we ask not, but there's never been a more poignant time than now, especially for some of these private employers who are saying, what can I do in order to move things forward? So I could tell you that when I worked at City Hospital, we designed some of these programs when I was there, even when it became the Boston Medical Center, which work with the Training Inc. program to become one of the employers in town, if you will, that hired the most people out of the Training Inc. program and were willing to take a chance on folks. So I think that's a terrific idea. And I think, you know, I'd be willing to partner with Kevin and Rufus and talk about how we can move that forward.
Hey, I'd like to add SOAR to that list as well. And I also agree with all that Rufus said and all that's been said thus far. We are currently in the midst of putting together a sales pitch that will be using to deliver to corporations, nonprofits, state and city agencies to exact that, to try to see what kind of partnerships can we develop, what kind of pipelines can we build to have a more easily on-ramping opportunity for the clients that we work with to get opportunities in some of these agencies or institutions or organizations that they typically wouldn't get opportunities in, but with little training would be qualified for a bunch of these opportunities.
Oh, great, thank you all. Quick comment, plug from Christiane from Riverside Community Care. She wants to connect with all of you. They provide mental health support and they're a service provider. Another question we have is from, I'm sorry, I'm just trying to figure out where it went. Well, one from Sean. Are there any additional supports for either disabled folks or LGBTQ plus folks who are reintegrating? I'm assuming that means returning from incarceration. Maybe that's for you, Kevin.
Was that question, or could you read that question again? I'm sorry.
Sure, the question was, are there any additional supports for either disabled folks or LGBTQ plus folks who are reintegrating? And if we could be brief, because we're going to have a hard stop at 12:30.
Oh, just real briefly, the city of Boston has an assortment of departments that are helping all LGBTQI and disabled individuals. On our website, boston.gov/returning citizens, all of our departments are listed. And please definitely connect with them because there is help. If you cannot find what you're looking for, our contact number is on there as well as my email address. You can email me and I will make sure that the proper resource, you're in connection with the proper resource.
Yeah, that was going to be my answer also. You can use either the website that Kev just offered, or anyone within this chat can connect you directly to a city department that can support you. I'm just thinking about the Disabilities Commission that the city of Boston has to offer to help any individual dealing with disabilities, and we can make those direct connects. And the idea is that any individual coming for assistance, it could be a one-stop shop. They can connect with us, connect with Project Opportunity. We'll be able to make the direct referral to the city departments that can support them in any area of need. So that would just be my short, abridged answer while we run up on the stop time.
Great. Thank you so much, Dr. Faulk. Thank you, Ms. Vivian, Talia, Devo, Asha, Kevin, our esteemed panelists. You definitely have lent a lot of insight and resources to everyone who's on the call and to myself. So thank you so much. Thank you to Mayor Walsh for this charge to support people impacted by CORI, to Trin, the entire OWD staff. Definitely visit OWD's website. Shout out to Katie Wiesner on the tech support, Justin Polk, Lynn Sanders, Alex Gray. I have to shout out my office because, and all of you and the Project Opportunity team in really helping to perfect this initiative, which is still sort of developing. Thank you to all of you, service providers, partners, residents impacted by CORI. We could not do this work without you. Please do share your information with your networks about the CORI Ceiling program. Registration is actively rolling. And with that, I think we conclude. We're actually a bit early. So, if anyone has any closing remarks, I definitely welcome you to take the stage.
I would just say, just want to congratulate OWD and you, Bethany, for leading this charge, and also just in making sure that everyone watching knows that this is just the first step, the beginning conversation. There's going to be more conversations being had. This is not a charge, or this is not just a momentary thing. This is really something that we're trying to make sure this is a sustainable effort, and we're reaching out to all individuals impacted by CORI, those returning and those are currently already in back home. And just in terms of as a city of Boston, we want to make sure that you know that we are supportive of you, and we're going to be here for the long one. So again, congratulations OWD for this great work. And I want to thank all the panelists as well. But this is the first step of many more, and just great work. That's it.
I agree with Rufus. Bethany, thank you for bringing us together. It's been a great, not only I think education for the audience, but also just allowing us to talk about how we can continue to partner in order to make sure that we're doing what we can as a city to give everybody an opportunity. When you talk about opportunity, there are people who they're losing hope. So this is about how do we have some empathy, compassion, and realize that we have to make sure that people keep hoping that opportunities are there and available. We have to get this information out there. But also, if they have a CORI, it's not the end of the world. How do we, work together to ensure that where there's instances that people can get their CORI sealed? Like I said, for me, I think that has been the most difficult thing when I encounter people who have CORIs, is they don't have the ability to do it on their own. They need some assistance. So Asha, brother, I greatly appreciate that information that you've provided. So don't be surprised if I'm sending a number of people your way because it's highly needed. So thank you once again for Bethany putting this together, for Trin and her leadership, someone who really has the heart to do the work. Thank you.
Bethany, I just wanted to say really quickly, there are a lot of people who the courts did wrong at some point that is indisputable. And there are some people who might have had a situation that have moved on with their life, like Talia said at the beginning of this conversation. So I know there's kind of a PTSD that happens when you're in court and bad things happen. You don't want to go back to court. But the first step in, this stuff doesn't go away. So the first step is going down to the courts and beginning to start closing these up and take care of it. You go back into the belly of the beast, but this time it's used to your advantage. So that first step has to start with you going down to the court, getting the resources that you need. Most of the stuff is accessible online and very functional for the average person. Take that first step so you can begin to move on with your life.
I want to say thank you to Bethany and Trin, Office of Workforce Development, for putting this together. And thank you for all the people who participated as watchers. And a special shout out to all the panelists and for the work that you're doing out in the community. And I really want to say thank you to the people who are willing to collaborate to help to get some of this work done. If it's anything that I could do to assist your agency in some of the work that you're doing, feel free to reach out. Don't hesitate. And I will be reaching out on my end. Thank you.
I'd like to echo that sentiment. Thank you, Trin, and thank you, Bethany. This has been amazing. I look forward to, I'm excited for the connections, and I'm excited to connect with all of those individuals who are watching today. Thank you very much and have a blessed week.
Likewise. Thank you, Bethany.
All right, thanks everyone. I'm so sorry if we weren't able to get to your questions. Definitely reach out to our offices. Thank you again to all of the panelists. It's been an honor. Thank you to the mayor. Thank you to OWD again and again. And we couldn't do this without all of your partnerships in the audience and on the panel. So with that, be safe, be well, have a great rest of your day, and thank you for joining. Peace and love, y'all.